Hello, everybody. I love when we just break in here. My name is Timothy Gager, and welcome to Virtual Friday's Dire Literary Series. And tonight, our feature is Alina Stefanescu. And she's going to read for us, and we will ask her some questions. But let me this is going to be a really great thing. If you want to find out about her, just go to her website, and which is alinastefanescu.com, and there she is. And I'm not going to read it. You guys can read it right off the screen. But she was born in Romania and lives in Alabama. And the rest of her bio is all of the awards that she has won, pretty much. And I can go right here, and you can go right here and see them all, which is quite a wonderful list. It goes on and on and on. And you can definitely visit this website and get a sense of Alina. And without anything else from me, let me turn it over to our guest.
Hi. I'm so excited to be reading tonight from Dor, which is a new book that was published from Wandering Aengus Press. And it's a book that's sort of based on a Romanian word, dor, which is loosely translated as longing. But if you talk to Romanians, they all have different ways to translate it. And so I ended up writing kind of a book about this word. And I'm going to start with the dedication to my father, because the book is dedicated to him. And I think it's kind of a good place to start. So from my father, Doru, that's his name, whose name is rooted in longing and who made a home for us there. Doru, I miss you like missing words. I miss you as if the act is inherent in the naming. And maybe Romanian is the only language where longing is a homeland, where longing is so reliable that mothers name their sons longing to keep them nearer. So his name is actually longing, like it's belonging. That's what it translates as. And I think that's really unique because in the US, we have a sort of view of when you want something, you go get it, you achieve it, you succeed, etc. And this view of longing isn't something that can ever be fulfilled. It's a delight in just wanting something you can't have or recuperate. And it's countercultural in that way. I think there's something kind of radical about it, and I like it. So I'm going to read a few poems from Dor, and then I'm going to I'm happy to talk and answer any questions. So this is called My Polish Child, and it's a poem about a miscarriage. And people don't talk about miscarriages much, and so I thought I'd write a poem about it. My Polish Child. I lost a child on the streets of Krakow. Somewhere near the center of the square, women queued with pigeons. The ending I wanted was illegal. My cousin came on a train from Romania. Like an accordion winding down a carnival, we tried hard to find the absent word. Loss, layered like velvet curtains round our lips. The cathedral held a rat in reserve, its eyes approaching vermilion. I felt a color, not an expression of life. Stones steamed with the imprint of ancient chariots. I crossed my heart, told my cousin, we have always been running, letting the next breath escape. A couple ended their argument under neon. I held tight the ticket. What happened is unlikely to explain. I must have carried it wrong. So I grew up in Alabama. That's where my parents, when they defected, got jobs. And so I have this strange Romanian Alabamian self. And in some ways, Romania and Alabama are similar. They're both very focused on foodways and it's sort of a warm culture, but they're also very different. And they're both sides of me. And so this book also tries to sort of reconcile those two spaces and those two sides and those differences. And I took the kids and the husband to Transylvania to leave my mom's ashes a few summers ago in this one of the spaces she asked. And so I'm going to read a poem from there. Portrait with Pony in Transylvania. The pony bit her close to the pelvis, the pale flesh of upper thigh going blue. She kept the closed wound through those 2 weeks they wandered, the month of June's thickening bruise. The love bite lingered like the scent of old apples, your favorite perfume, the one you wore when sealing gray ash inside the middle blue matryoshka. She carried the nibbling absence over steep mountain hips, through streams that dribbled like sweat between a landscape's breasts, to find everything she adores becomes a woman's body in her mind. A man sold her beer named after a bear, and she drank it on the curb where a road quilled into serpentine as a story began to tell me. An unplanned poppy queried from the ditch. And what is memory if not fondled ache, pony teeth, cherished blister, budless thing, unbound muscle sprain? This wound with a hand in its mouth keeps talking. I carry your ashes, Mom, in the blue doll's womb. It is a tomb. It is an ache. It is a train. So one of the reasons we went back there was the family house that my grandfather built is also the house where my grandmother, who I'm named after, died. Her name was Alina. She was my namesake, and she died 3 months before I was born. She had breast cancer. She was very sick, but she died because of an agreement that she made with my grandfather, who was also a physician, that when she was no longer recognizable to herself, he would give her too much morphine. He would take her to this house he had built for their retirement, which wasn't going to happen anymore. And my mom didn't know about it. Her sister didn't know about it. My granddad did it all on his own. And there's this weird thing with being named after someone who died while you were in your mom's belly in this way that is unspeakable. I don't know if we have words for those kinds of choices and decisions, but I'm going to read the poem that I wrote about it. I think it was first published in Plowshares, and it's called Playing Possum. This is my mother, newly dead, Mom says. She died without suffering. I fondle the photo of my maternal grandma playing possum. A dead possum in a ditch is called roadkill. A possum whose playing is not yet carcass. The women in my family will play anything to make you wonder, just to see what you'd say about us then. The woman in the photo is my namesake, the photo taken by the man she met and married in medical school. It was he who administered the final morphine injection when breast cancer claimed her brain. He did this without telling their daughters. He consulted none, invited none into the living room of the Transylvanian cottage he drafted and built by hand. It was her green dream house. He did it because she wanted to remain herself. She made him promise. She made him promise again. She said, "If you love me." He signed her request with a blue fountain pen from Czechoslovakia. The contract hid among papers, letters, photos he preserved, images of her naked, arms raised above her head. His Alina, winsome, hungry, amorous, and finally, faceless, 2 gray hands locked in languor over her chest, an Orthodox cross, shaped limbs, a flock of birds on their way to the Danube. I am an atheist now, he announced, but no one believed. None believed a man who hated God so faithfully could ever come to disbelieve himself. This was Ceausescu's Romania. The dictator ruled from posters with iron fists. I know hate and hope are kindred, kith, knit through our palms, and these lines in my hands, a silenced mutation. These are kind of heavy, and I feel like I should read something funny. And there's some funny poems in Dor, but it's mostly a lot of longing and a lot of the in-between space. One thing that's been interesting is living in Alabama and watching this sort of battle against abortion, the religious side of it here, and how similar it is to Ceausescu's complete banning of abortion, birth control, and condoms in Romania, which resulted, of course, in, I think, things that you've probably seen about orphanages and orphans. But it's weird seeing how Alabama and Romania, or the dictatorship Romania, are similar in that way. And it's very disconcerting too, because Ceausescu didn't do it for religious reasons, and here it is. So there's some poems about abortion in this book too, because of that, because they're a connecting thread. But this one is about nationalism, and that's another problem that seems to also have reappeared. It's called Turbofolk Incident. And turbofolk music, I need to sort of share the background. Turbofolk music is a kind of music that emerged as a recruiting tool to engage young persons to fight in the nationalist Balkan Wars of the 1990s. So turbofolk was kind of like punk in the ways that punk goes wrong when it's gone wrong, much too many of our disappointment. But that's a whole nother conversation that I would love to have at some point. But it became a recruiting tool, and it has its own ideologies and myths. So this is called Turbofolk Incident, and it's for John and his surreal confessionalism, which is the school John Riccio has kind of created. I came to the park for songbirds who sing in unpredatored darkness. I was chewing on a man's fingerpick, thinking banjo is new grass's blueness. It was noonish and nowhere near darkening. Me probing the notes between agitprop and modes of remembering. Yo nostalgia, thou art stalwart in loyal flashbacks and ads for kindred cope, the red wave flagrants. This is how we belong to a community in the commercial. My eyes go dirtier than birders, seeking the winged elusive, thriving in thickets with scarlet underpants. I was still nibbling this, chewing the man's pick, when turbofolking happened. The picnic shelter souped up like a Cadillac womb, its Avon flags aloft, denizens subwoofing local tunes about goodness and greatness, dirt for lyric nationalism, the days of Goldens accompanied by subreddited croon, being something as part of being a package. Turbofolksters hitched their horses to neo-traditional conditionals, including plastics, jingo. One man preppered to lay down his electric accordion for the people. It was like wishing on screened stars. I felt connected, directed towards the possible cardinal. No songbird overhead. And do I have time for, what do I have time for? How many more?
About one.
One, okay.
Send me your best one, I bet.
Oh gosh, there's no, I don't know what that would be or how. So I'll do Red Chair with Potential. This is for my mom. My mom died of an embolus while she was in her sleep when she went for a quick trip to Amsterdam to see my cousin, and it was a shock. I'm still not really over it. She was a formidable person, and I guess the women in my family die young, which is not a fun legacy, but I think about it a lot. And so this is a poem in the ways that I've tried to deal with the loss of her. It's called Red Chair with Potential. I stared at the red chair until it turned into a boulder in a chestnut grove where dolls remove their clothes and cry. But first, it was a podium where the blonde Barbie pastor officiated a marriage of two moms. Then it was a hideout for horrible toothaches. Look, I don't believe my mom knew she was dying, or I need to prove none know the difference between dreaming and disappearing. Its edges sunk like the angles of shipwrecks. The bottle near the boulder has no message. The chair is never a constellation. I give up on the moon, its bold statements, all boneless promises meet. There is a mask inside a man on the bridge before dying. There's the water. There is a way falling goes on without us. Pretend it's the boulder. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful, wonderful stuff. And we're going to jump right in with some questions. We had a former feature, Cheryl Pappas, who loves your work and says, do you find that your family is the ultimate inspiration for you to write, and what gives your poetry rootedness?
Well, Cheryl, that's such a great question. I think my family is the subject of many poems. I don't think that there is any rootedness. I think that is why I write, and that's why I wrote when I was a kid, when I was the weird kid at school, the one that couldn't walk, the one that, I was in this terrible accident, and writing has always been a way to deal with the fact that I can't be in a room and not notice the person who is the saddest. And I can't compartmentalize that. I can't go on and have fun and pretend like that's okay, or they've done something to deserve it. There's a sort of, so that is partly, if there's a root that I have, it's in my love for the world, my fear in some ways of all of us, of the monster in myself that exists, in the study of different totalitarian systems throughout history, and how prone all of us are to need to belong. So your question is really important in some ways, because this whole need to belong is connected to longing, belonging, right? To be part, to have a, and that, so some of the most beautiful things in us are also the most dangerous.
What you were saying about wanting to belong, I saw in another interview that you said that there's this problem that you want people to like you, but the American measure of success is so divided, so anti-like. How do we fix that?
I don't think we can. Like, I don't think that you can ever. I think we live in a late stage capitalist system where all of that, we spectate ourselves, spectating ourselves, spectating ourselves. I'm writing this essay about headshots because I was trying to understand why I'm so uncomfortable with them, why I change mine every 5 minutes, why I cannot just, and my husband's like, it's the iconoclast in you. You hate this idea of this one, but it's also a fear, like in the Romanian villages, people are like, you can't take a picture of us, you're stealing something from us. And there's a theft in the way that we sell ourselves, in the way that we're asked to sell ourselves, in the idea of success, in the way that in the metric, right? There's something that is the absence of poetry. And I can't reconcile, it's hard to reconcile. I think every writer struggles with how you do this thing you're supposed to do, which is also the thing you're critiquing in your poem. And it keeps you complicit and humble, right? Like it keeps you,
Oh yeah.
As Václav Havel said, all our hands are dirty. Let's move from there. There's blood on all of our hands. Let's start right there,
Well, if you're selling your soul to sell yourself and to sell like books, like, do you ever feel accomplished or successful when you do sell those books, when you're pushing it in those ways?
I don't.
It's that really thin line that, your book comes out, you've had many of them, and suddenly you're not an author, you're a marketer. Do you easily make that jump, or is that hard for you? It's
very hard for me. It's very hard. I'm not good at, in fact, I haven't lined up a book tour. I haven't done any of the things you're supposed to do. I think the thing for me is I'm so grateful when a book comes out. Like I'm so grateful when I see someone's reading it. More than success, I feel just gratitude, like to that person who spent that money on something that meant a lot to me, and that I hope will in some way touch them or make their world a little bit bigger. Just like writers have made my world bigger. That's who made my world bigger. That's who, people talk about the teachers that influence them. I always have to say it's the books. For me, it was the books. Books as a kid in Alabama were what saved me in so many ways. Like,
seems like every book that you've written has won an award, either your poetry or your short fiction. Now, do you enter publishing contests to win those awards and get the books published, or are they just like what's the general rule here?
I usually enter, I'll enter, like if I have a manuscript that's ready, I'll enter it into a few contests. And if it gets one, then I'm happy. If not, I'll sit on it and forget about it, like I've done with some of my favorites. So here's the irony. Some of my favorite books that I've written that are there, like completely finished, never got picked up. I submitted them along with other ones. And the ones that I was like, about, they got picked up. And so you have this, like, you're like, oh, I wish you could read, you always, you feel bad about the child. So you have the child that like gets, wins these awards, and you're like, but you should see this other child too, that it's not fair because they haven't gotten the chance to be, seen. So it's a struggle. It's a struggle. Like I have a few manuscripts right now, and I'm trying to decide where to place them and whether to enter contests or to just try and submit them without the contest side. It's hard to.
Now, do you also write in Romanian or translate into Romanian, or do you just publish in the English language?
I mostly publish in English. I have translated some of my stuff into Romanian, just for fun. And I do translate from Romanian and French into English. Like the Romanian into English, I do for money too. Like it's a financial thing. But I'm always grateful when I get to, like, for example, I recently got to translate a manuscript by an Israeli citizen who had died, and whose manuscript was found, but he wrote it in Romanian because he ran from Romania because of the Shoah. And translating his poems was just a real powerful encounter. I felt like so, I don't know, such love and care for the words and for the idealism that he had. He was very much a socialist with a strong faith in humanity. That he dedicated a poem to Che Guevara. Like it was as a time, and to have experienced, to have lived through that, and still have this sort of hope, that to have this revolutionary spirit. I don't know. It was just a really powerful. Translation is an encounter every time. There's this fidelity that you want to something you want to hold on to in the writer, and there's the different ways in which you can do that, and making those choices is always very intimate, very like, you have to love who you're translating to feel really.
Well, translation is a real service to other writings, much like writing reviews. Now, you write a lot of reviews, and which is great. And also on your website, you list places that are open and friendly for the writing of reviews or also the receiving of a review for a book. Now, why is it so hard to get reviews these days?
Because there's so many books, and because a lot of people find out about books from a lot of times people have agents now, and they will do, or they'll have, or their press does really good publicity, and so they will flood a magazine with those books ahead of time, and then you get assigned a book to review, and it tends to be from one of these people that has a really effective publicity engagement. So there's multiple ways in which you get reviewed, and multiple ways in which a magazine is willing to publish a review. You have to be within this certain time frame. It's hard with chapbooks, which is so frustrating because there's so many incredible chapbooks that you want to review. And then also I think reviewing, like I don't ever just read that book when I'm reviewing it. I read at least one or two other books by the author, and if they are referencing a book or writing in dialogue with a book, I try to read that one too. So there's a certain care that you feel, and it takes time.
Are you a fast reader?
I am a fast reader. I'm a fast reader. Yes, but I've discovered with reviews, I am the most careful out of everything. Out of all my writing, when it comes to reviews, they're the ones that keep me up at night, where I'm like, did I get that wrong? Am I saying something I shouldn't say there? Is that a claim I can't make? Or is that misunderstanding this person and the culture that they come from and their experience? And it's much more humbling, I think, for me.
Now, what makes a good review, and how can you tell the difference between a good review and a kind review?
For me, what makes a good review is beautiful writing. Like I want the review to be gorgeous. I want to read a review that is as lush in language as the book it's reviewing. I don't want to read a review that feels like it's something formulaic I think reading and what we bring as readers to the page is also beautiful. To me, reading is, I love reading. I'm a reader too, as much as I'm a writer. And, the way that we think about that and put that into thought deserves aesthetic attention. It deserves, I think, in my opinion, I like to read reviews that are just good writing too, that are, well written, I guess.
Now there's a line in one of your poems that is, a good girl poem waits for the base, but these are not good girl poems. So what is a good girl poem versus a bad girl poem?
I think, speaking of socialization of femininity and how gender in the South especially is performed, and how you are raised, with the aspirational models that are, very much, I grew up in the age where people were still going to debutante balls and cotillions and, the sorority. I'm sorry to anyone who is involved in a sorority, but, that life, when you see it on campus from the outside, very much resembles a hyper-groomed sort of femininity that is created as a status and as an aspirational value, but is not does not stand on itself, in itself, right? So I guess bad girl, I'm not sure what bad girl would be, except to say it's not the good that we're groomed to be. And my son said something really interesting to me one time. We were passing these billboards and they were selling lingerie or something. And he's a little kid then. And he looked at it and he's like, Mom, those billboards they're smiling, but they're not nice. They want something from me. They're trying to take something. And I was like, damn, you know what? Welcome to commercial. I'm glad you're reading this critically, unconsciously, but that's true. What does your smile want from me, right? What does this performance of this particular kind of femininity demand that I do? Why am I doing it? For who? Who am I performing this for? Who's more comfortable if I'm this kind of girl, right? Those are the questions I think that as female identifying persons, we have to sometimes ask.
Do you get frustrated in the fact that strong femininity is not rewarded? It's still held back. It seems like they're the same issues with being a feminist and equal in everything and being strong, being looked at and respected as they've been in the past 50 years or so? How many more years do you think it's going to take?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't know. I think one thing that is interesting to me is my mom used to always warn me like about the evil eye. And I used to make fun of her. I was like, that is some crap that mom got in some village where she's bringing this to the US and talking about this evil eye and warning me. But what she meant was, and I didn't get it then, but I do now. What she meant was, here in the US, Alina, you can be a physician like she was, like me, right? And you're a businesswoman, so that's okay. But if you start talking about books and ideas, and if you talk all the time as a female about things that you think about, people will not like you in Alabama. You will be seen as weird, cosmopolitan, i.e. threatening, globalist. Like just read every dog tag that you can into the kind of immigrant that is interested in ideas. So we have a strong anti-intellectual pressure. And girls who are kind of nerdy or like books a lot, you know, or just like thinking, will not always be okay with showing that in school. You will see them try and find ways to make it more comfortable for others so that the others don't feel, you know, and that is something I've noticed. So speaking of, you know, we can assert ourselves sexually. We're perfectly allowed to assert ourselves sexually. We're allowed to assert ourselves, you know, aesthetically. We're not really allowed to say, you know what, I'd rather just be reading a book. And here's what I'm thinking about. That's still to many people, you know, very, very uncomfortable. You know? And so my mom's statement was basically, don't court envy by talking about what you know. That was the, you know, and so I get it in a different way now. I get like what she was kind of like telling me, but, you know, then I just did not. And, you know.
Well, let's wrap it up. Last question. I noticed that like you and I have been in similar paths in terms of how we've put out books and how we've gotten published and who we've published with. And, you know, I've always heard the phrase champion of the small press. Now, how do you feel if someone says, Alina, you're just a champion of the small press? What's your first initial reaction toward that?
It's just more like I'm grateful to small presses for publishing me and for also bringing books into my house that I love by writers that are, you know, I think doing incredible, innovative work. I always remind myself that, you know, the writers that fascinate me the most are not the ones that became bestsellers. And certainly not in their time. They may have much later, but they were not, you know, that's not where the really deeply, to me, fascinating and engaging and earth-shaking sort of stuff was being done. There is one question from John on there.
Yeah, it's how similar is, I was gonna try to double back on that. We were talking about translation and at that point. And John asked, how similar is Romanian to other Romance languages? Great question.
It's really similar. So it's very close to Italian. Like if I'm in Italy and I'm drunk and the Italians are talking, I will speak Romanian and then I can think I understand them. Like it's that close. So there's that. But it's also, I mean, there's this 20% maybe that's Slavic. A lot of the words about, for example, in folklore are Slavic, which is interesting. So like a lot of the Z words, the words for dragon, the words for, you know, werewolves and stuff like that are Slavic. So you have this Latin base, and then you have the word da, which means yes, is Russian, right? And dada, Tristan Saras is yes, yes, right? Those are which he started off in Bucharest. So there's a like, you know, it's a Latin language. So it has a lot of the features of a Latin language with Slavic words and nouns and some verbs that are really interesting too.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I loved your reading and I loved chatting with you. That was just pretty fantastic. And here are some of Alina's books. So definitely check these out. And do you have any favorite anthologies she's in? Do you have any favorite independent bookstores you would like to plug?
I love Thank You Books. They are in Avondale and Birmingham, and they do a fantastic job of just bringing really good books to Birmingham, just really good books. So yeah, I love them.
Well, great stuff. I'm now going to turn off the Facebook feed. If whoever's watching on the Facebook feed that wants to read at the open mic, please log in with a link. The door's wide open for you. And also, if you want to be in the Q&A, I can't double back and look at those questions, but for the next time, please log into the Zoom and be involved in that. But Alina, thank you so much. It was great having you.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.